Hey folks, happy Saturday morning rant. I got bad news today. We lost a hero this week. We lost Joseph Jazz Hayden. Some of y'all won't know him because some of y'all ain't been around in this criminal justice reform movement long enough to know him. I ain't mad at you, but you should know your history and you should know how we got here. I want to talk a little bit about Jazz because like people either love Jazz or they hated him. He was controversial, but what type of leader ain't fucking controversial? If you ain't controversial, you probably ain't really doing shit anyway. So Jazz was controversial, all good. And either you loved him or you hated him. I did both. That's what I loved. Like, that's what I love about what I've learned about people is like, they can be good, they can be bad, and you can still love them all in between, recognizing that that's just how people are. There's no good people, there ain't no bad people. I don't give a fuck what nobody says. I know y'all want to have good and bad people, but that's about you making you feel good about you. I know that people can be good and they can be bad, and the shit is much more nuanced. So that's how Jazz was to me. And I say that because like I remember Jazz, like the story of Jazz when I was sitting in a prison cell before I came home in 2000. And I remember people like him and Eddie Ellis and others, you know, doing their thing, like coming out of prison and like standing in front of microphones and talking shit to people about why we should get rid of mass incarceration. I was like, who the fuck are these dudes? Because back then, you just ain't really do that shit. There wasn't no movement. Like now it's easy. Everybody gets invited to Harvard, Yale, NYU, Columbia, all these different places to talk about criminal justice reform in front of progressive white people who love to hear that shit and check a box and feel good and have a story to go home and tell their neighbors and stuff. But that's not what it was like in the beginning. What it was like in the beginning was people like Eddie Ellis and Jazz out here hollering about this shit when people was like, who the fuck are these niggas? And like, they're convicts. They're violent convicts. Anyway, Jazz, like, I'm gonna miss Jazz because like now, years later, almost 25 years later, like I could remember the lessons that Jazz was trying to teach us and how annoyed I was at those lessons. And particularly the lesson about like, yo, you want to go after this money and run nonprofits and do the work from inside of a nonprofit. He was like, you go ahead, you do that, but you need to know what the implications are. And at the time, I'm like, yo, this is some bullshit. We're going to get this money and we're going to go out there and change the world. But Jazz was smart. He was smarter than I was, that's for sure, because he was like, yo, there's implications when you try to take revolutionary work and house it inside of an institution that's sanctioned by the government. That's one thing he noticed right away. And then you go out and seek funding from the very people who have actually hugely benefited from the way this country operates. And he was visionary enough and thoughtful enough and wise enough to see all that. And unfortunately, wisdom comes with time. Can't put that shit in a bottle and sell it. I'll be fucking rich. But yeah, nah, he knew at the time that we were setting ourselves up. So it's not that you can't do work inside of a nonprofit. I know people that do good work, but you got to do that shit like from a place of intellectual honesty. You got to know what the fuck that means. And he knew what the fuck it meant. And so you look at all these nonprofits now, you look at their social media, and you know, their social media is partially to like drum up the support that they need for their work. So they're speaking to the donors, and it's about drumming up like members and people to believe in what it is that they're doing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like, that's just part of the game. I'm not stupid. But like, you look at their social media and you see terms like fair, equitable, forgiving, healing, and restorative and compassionate. And then you got to ask yourself, you got to be like, yo, where the fuck does that play out in your work? Because if it doesn't play out in your work, especially when you feel aggrieved, then what the fuck are you doing? And it's got to be when you feel aggrieved. That's the other thing people don't get. Like, it's easy to be like, I believe in a more fair criminal justice system when you're not the one that feels like you've been harmed. So in the system, while we don't have to bifurcate like victims from offenders the way the system does so that the system can remain adversarial the way it is, because we know that doesn't work. But at the same time, when you do work to undo the system, you got to recognize that there's going to be a moment where you as a nonprofit leader are going to feel aggrieved by a staff member, by a board member, by a leader, especially when it's black and brown people. And I know white folks get angry when I be like black and brown, but I'm not saying poor white people don't face discrimination too, but stop fucking around. This is America. Black and brown people get treated differently. And guess what? In the nonprofit space, even in the criminal justice reform nonprofit space, shit ain't really no different. So this reporter called me this week to talk about Jazz Hayden and to get a little bit of a quote from me. And I just started ranting. I don't need Saturday morning to come to start ranting. So I just started fucking ranting. And by the end, he was like, yo, you seem kind of jaded about this criminal justice reform movement. And I was like, motherfucker, why the fuck wouldn't I be jaded? First of all, I have never seen the kind of harm and punishment that this system, this nonprofit space, doles out to leaders in prison or in the streets. Like, I've been pistol whipped. I had niggas pull out guns on me. I have niggas pulled out knives on me. I've had all sorts of shit happen when I was out in the streets as a young person. But there was rules. There was fucking rules. And while people in the nonprofit space ain't pulling out guns, they pull out weapons that fucking harm people for life, especially formerly incarcerated people, black and brown people, because where the fuck are you gonna go after that? Like, when I was in nonprofit, I was earning 150 grand a year, height of my game, doing my thing. It wasn't lost on me that the minute a board came after me, the minute the field came after me, the minute an elected official or some other policymaker who didn't like me came after me and I got pushed out of the space, that I couldn't go down the fucking block and get a job at McDonald's. Like, does that get lost on people? That we got all these people that we take from pet to threat, and as soon as they become a threat and they get blacklisted and y'all decide y'all don't want them in the nonprofit space no more, and then they operate, they respond angrily or they respond harmfully, that's from fear. Anger, harm, all that other shit, usually the underlying feeling is fucking fear. And you put them in a position of fear. So who the fuck are you to be sitting up in a nonprofit making six figures, saying you leading some shit, and the minute you feel aggrieved by someone on your team, you want to fucking roll out your lawyers. All these for-profit lawyers that check a box doing good work for nonprofits are more than willing to be heavy-handed and crush the fucking life and soul of the people who work for you when you decide you don't love them anymore. But you know what the problem is? Y'all want to build a criminal justice system that can house your child if he or she kills someone. One that feels safe and equitable and fair and gives them a second chance. But you know what? You should be building a criminal justice system that can house the person who killed your child. That's a different way to think about your work. That's a different way to approach the work, because you know what? That forces you to dig into your rhetorical values and see how much you're actually willing to create something in a moment where you feel harmed, where you feel aggrieved. Everyone wants to yell at people like Bill Clinton for using the word thugs when he talked about young black people. That shit was wrong, but y'all are acting like fucking thugs. Y'all are acting like fucking thugs. And I know if you're progressive, you're not supposed to use words like that. Fuck that. Y'all are acting like fucking thugs. And that's a problem. You know why it's a problem? It's a problem for all sorts of reasons, like I'm describing right now in this rant. But it's a problem because it makes you a fucking hypocrite. And if you're a hypocrite, nobody ain't got to listen to you. So all these Americans that you trying to convince that they should do something different, that they should be open to restorative justice, that they should be open to the idea that we could get in circles and work all this shit out, you can't even get in a fucking circle when you're hurt or when you're angry or when you're scared. Like, just pick up the phone and be like, yo, I'm sorry we showed up this way. Can we have a conversation about the harm you're causing and the harm we're causing in return? But y'all don't want to do that because that's the hard way to do shit. And then you got people out here who totally oppose anything you putting out in the world, and you expect them to just wake up one day and be willing to do something different when you can't even show them the way. You can't even be the change you want to see in the world. Your lawyers make it worse. I got a lot of friends who are lawyers, but I've worked at a nonprofit public interest law firm for 6.5 years. Lawyers are good for some things, but lawyers are trained to think a certain way. Like, point A to point B for a lawyer looks very specific. That's how they think, that's how they operate. They're very conservative. And they come down hard. They use the law to come down hard on people. That's what the law does to black and brown people. Why the fuck would you think that hiring a lawyer to handle a civil matter versus trying to resolve it in a human way would be the way to deal with shit in the nonprofit space and to come out of it feeling like you're movement building? Do a circle, motherfucker. Or whatever the fuck you do. Cipher, circle, call it what the fuck you want, because I know the word's gonna change in a couple of days. I know how that shit works. But at least be true to who the fuck you are. It took me a long time to get here, yo. Almost 25 fucking years to understand what the fuck I was doing wrong and what other people were doing wrong. You got people come out the criminal justice system who come from a life of harm, pain, suffering, make it through the criminal justice system, maybe get a little college degree or something, come out, y'all love them because they look like the poster child for what the fuck you want to do. They give you legitimacy. And then when they show up in a way that you don't fucking like or that scares your funders, you abandon them. What the fuck did you expect? Like, what did you expect? Just because they got one set of skills and they're charismatic and they might be able to raise a little bit of money and they could tell their story over and over so that you could raise money, you thought somehow they had all the fucking skills? How many fucking white men educated at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, run businesses and still fuck it up? And they get a fucking second chance. That second chance bullshit y'all be talking, they get grace. But a formerly incarcerated black or brown person or a white poor person who runs a nonprofit and gets it wrong once, does some shit wrong with your fucking money, says some shit wrong to the media, you ready to cancel him and throw him the fuck out? That makes you a fucking hypocrite. What kind of movement are you trying to build? Or are you trying to build a movement? Because some of y'all just trying to protect your $100,000 salary. You've never seen $100,000 before. You've never seen a microphone before. You never talked to a reporter before. You never sat with John Legend before. You never been on some billionaire's fucking yacht or fucking airplane or fucking helicopter before. And that shit becomes worth more than actually building the movement that people like fucking Jazz Hayden died for. So yeah, that's my rant today. It's Saturday though. I already got my workout on. I got my groceries on. I'm up. I'm out. I'm cruising these New York streets. I'm gonna get a lot of shit done. I'm gonna stay ahead of the game. I'm gonna try to keep making money so that I can fucking keep the haters off my back and say what the fuck I want, when the fuck I want, and not have some fun to pick up the phone and call me and say, nigga, you can't say that again. But I hope in the meantime, y'all have a good Saturday. And I hope y'all don't let nobody steal your rainbow. It might sound like somebody stealing my rainbow, but the minute I'm finished with this video, I'm good. I just got to get this off my chest. I hope y'all have a great weekend. Peace.